What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the most comprehensive weekly NFL player review series on the internet, my Studs and Duds series. Today we're going to be reviewing the studs and duds from NFL Week 10, whose stock is rising, whose stock is falling. While we do that, I'm going to be going through this week's update for my own custom Madden roster. So yes, it is just a video game, but they are my own ratings, and it makes for a nice, convenient way to share my perceptions on these players and how my opinion on these guys is changing week by week. So buckle up, we're going to go game by game here, but I do ask that you please take a second to hit that like button down below and share this video with your friends who you think would also enjoy the series. So here we go, starting with the star of the week, and believe it or not, it is going to be Daniel Jones, quarterback of the New York Giants. Hoping that this continues to add to the record, that I don't have this preconceived, irrevocable bias against players. No, I would not have drafted Daniel Jones 6th overall in 2019. And yes, he has shown up until 2 weeks ago to be nothing but a turnover Jameis Winston-style wreck in the NFL, where yeah, he can move the ball, but he's just a game-losing interception or fumble waiting to happen. Well, the last 2 weeks he has shown that he has the ability to, as we already knew, move the ball downfield efficiently and look comfortable doing so, but he has definitely done a better job taking care of the football. Now, is it just a sample size thing? Is it just fluky that those fumbles, due to a lack of pocket presence, have not shown up? Has he just gone against bad defenses that haven't been able to force those passing mistakes? Only time will tell, but I will say this. You can win with this version of Daniel Jones. He's only on year 2 of his rookie contract. We're a long way away from any kind of debate about is he worth paying, how much do you pay him, is he a franchise quarterback? All I know is that he has shown in the last 2 weeks to be a very serviceable starter. The offensive line is playing well. He's getting his receivers healthy. He's getting help around him. And he looks like a capable starter in the NFL. So he's going to get recognition for that. And if he continues to play like this, I think he's going to keep climbing up into that sort of Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff breadth of starter. I still have some serious doubts that this is a quarterback you want to pay a ton of money and really lean on to carry your team. But we're a long way away from that. As we sit here right now, the Giants are stock up all the way, and Daniel Jones has been a big part of that. So we're going to give credit where credit's due. Daniel Jones, after a few weeks ago when I said I'm done with the guy, has completely shifted what he's showing on film. So good for Daniel Jones, good for the Giants. Now, we're going to take a look for our dud of the week at another quarterback from the 2019 NFL Draft, and that's going to be Drew Lock. And it is pretty crazy how over the last 2 weeks, Broncos fans have gone from TFG, you're just a hater, you don't know what you're watching, this guy's going to be a star, to, okay, yeah, we're either going to be really quiet and not admit that we were wrong, or agree with me that Drew Lock is nothing short of a raw, while talented backup quarterback, which is exactly what we're seeing. The biggest problem for me with Drew Lock, because you see the interceptions, you see the head-scratching plays, that is very much an issue, but just on a baseline level, he doesn't do the easy stuff well. People were so quick, Broncos fans, were so quick to blame Pat Shurmur, but you dial up the all-22 and the guy just doesn't execute what's easy, what's in front of him. He doesn't dissect defenses. He doesn't hang in the pocket and trust the play to develop. He bails from clean pockets, and then you get into these disaster situations where he's basically doing what he wanted to do at Missouri, which is just play backyard football, show off the arm, show off the mobility, but that just doesn't play in the NFL. Broncos fans, let me ask you this, because I know you're on board now. Like, you see it. Like, Drew Lock is just not a starting caliber quarterback right now. What is the real difference between Drew Lock and, say, Jeff Driscoll, the other quarterback here? You can make a case that Driscoll is actually more athletic traits and more experience in the NFL. So, Drew Lock, I'm not saying you need to bench the guy. The Broncos are going nowhere. You might as well find out if he does have some development in him. But yeah, man, it's just not looking good. It's definitely leaning towards the Broncos having a top 5 pick and drafting yet another quarterback here. Ultimately, that might work out for them, though, because I really like this crop of QBs coming in. All right, let's get into the games now. And just by nature of how we did things last week, where I took more of a grand scheme look at the season as a whole last week, we had probably the biggest update, the most changes we've ever had on this series last week. That came back the other way this week, and there just wasn't as many surprises this week, I suppose. So that makes sense, but definitely not as much movement this week as we've had in recent weeks. So let's start with that Houston Browns game. Not a lot of movement in this game. Hard to have a lot of big takeaways in this game where the passing game was nearly impossible due to the wind conditions, but lots of things to look at in the trenches for sure. So the Texans' defensive line continues to be a major problem. Ross Blacklock, this was the second round pick, the pick that they got for DeAndre Hopkins. So it certainly doesn't make that trade feel any better if you're a Texans fan. Blacklock looks lost. Might as well call him Ross Black Lost, because he, coming from the Big 12 to the NFL, is just getting bullied. He's an undersized defensive tackle. His quickness is not shining as a pass rusher, and it is not looking good. And honestly, a 70 might even be too high. He is looking early on like someone that just has a lot of growth to do. And then we have PJ Hall is also going to come down. He showed some nice flashes early on in his young Texans career. This is a former second-round pick for the Raiders that the Vikings traded for. He failed his physical. Houston picked him up early on. He showed some really nice splash plays in the run game, but those just have gone away, and you're seeing a less consistent player here with PJ Hall. So he's going to come down, leaning more towards maybe that just a rotational run defender as opposed to a capable three-down starting defensive tackle. And then Whitney Mercilus continues to show his age, just not making any impact at all. Worse run defender than he's ever been as well. So Whitney Mercilus continues his decline here for the Texans. Then for the Cleveland Browns, you'll notice everyone moving here in this game is inside the front seven. So Wyatt Teller comes back off of injury and just resumes his pain train season of just absolutely mauling dudes. The Browns had so much success running the ball this week. Wyatt Teller's return certainly a part of that. This dude is just simply put the biggest breakout of the 2020 season. He has emerged as the best guard in football this season. Whether that will last or not is only a time will tell situation. I can't really think of any reason why not. The guy flies off the ball. He is a top run blocker, but he's also settled down as a pass protector as well and played smart and kept everything in front of him, and has been a perfect fit with this play action scheme. So Wyatt Teller continues his ascension, coming back from injury this week. And then Jedrick Wills, the first round pick, just rounding out what I believe is the best offensive line in the NFL when healthy. Just a lockdown left tackle as a rookie. I bet he will end up around the 80s by the time this season is done. And then for the defense, these linebackers have played pretty well. They're not stars or anything, but Malcolm Smith and B.J. Goodson, these were good veteran pickups. This is a position the Browns have really struggled finding talent, and Smith been more of that weak side linebacker, showing that sideline to sideline speed, limiting big plays and all that stuff. And then B.J. Goodson, more of that thumper in the middle, been a very secure tackler in run defense for this team. It's been a weakness for this team, and these guys are doing a good enough job by Brown standards at the linebacker position. I would say it's still a need, but it's probably better than they expected. And then Ronnie Harrison has been contributing in the run defense as well, and he's actually been a better cover player. I was wrong. I didn't think there was much here in Ronnie Harrison. I thought he was just a bit of a tweener that didn't have much of a role in the NFL, but you put him in a good scheme where he can play that traditional box safety position. Jacksonville was trying to use him, in my opinion, way too much as a free safety. And Ronnie Harrison has done exactly that. He's come into the box and just been a stud in sort of that, Cam Chancellor-esque role. So he has been far from a liability in coverage, but the tackling ability and run defense contribution just contributing to this Browns physical nature. This is looking like a very good trade to go and get Ronnie Harrison, who's definitely ignited in a new culture here. And then just some notes. Terrence Mitchell went up last week. He continues to play well in Greedy Williams' shoes at that outside corner position. And then Larry Ogunjobi, we dropped him last week. He had a quick quick start to his season, contributing at a high level in run defense, fell off the face of the earth, and then this week in crappy conditions was a big part of the Browns' win this week. So he could be due to come back up after what's been a bit of a roller coaster career here in Cleveland. Then we have the Jags at Packers game. Just going to have one player coming up this week, and it's going to be Sidney Jones. Great interception on Aaron Rodgers, running stride for stride with a fast Marquez Valdes-Scantling on a crossing route. Jumps the ball and gets a pick. And he has just been really solid for the Jags all year long for the most part. A guy that was kind of a reject in Philadelphia, second-round pick. And this is a guy looking to rejuvenate his career here in Jacksonville. I would love for him to get a contract extension here, and then we could see Jones, still a young player, grow with C.J. Henderson, with whoever the future defensive mind is there for the Jaguars. And then for the Packers, Marquez Valdes-Scantling all aboard the roller coaster. We dropped him last week after more drops from him, and this was his best week as a Packer by far. Now, we have got to wait and see if this was just a matter of, 5 targets, just the drops that seem to be a 50% chance every time you throw in the ball. Maybe they just didn't show up this week. It's like a coin toss every time. So maybe it just landed on heads all 5 times this week. We'll see. I mean, he did look like a legitimate threat for this Packers offense that desperately needs that explosive element. So if he can get that confidence and get that trust with Aaron Rodgers and show that consistency, this is a guy with legitimate deep threat potential to be a real player in this league. Just needs to clean up the easy stuff, which for him does not seem so easy. So he is going to come up here, that catching going from about 55 to 59, the worst catch ratings of any receiver on my roster. But if he continues to play like that, that's not going to last forever. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Raven Green has definitely stepped in that strong safety position, kind of that dime linebacker, so to speak. The Packers run more dime than anyone in the league, and they need a guy like Raven Green to step up, especially with Shannon Sullivan, who played some of that last year, becoming this team's full-time slot corner. So Raven Green's been a nice add for this Packers defense that has been playing better as of late. They haven't gone against the best offenses, however. And then Kadar Holloman is stepping up. The Packers very beat up at that secondary position. This was a 5th-round pick in 2019, I believe, and he is getting his most playing time. He hasn't been amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been a secure tackler and holding down the fort there until they can get their starters back. And then Rashawn Gary, my dude, had by far his best game as a Packer. Now, he's already rated pretty nice, probably nicer than he's shown, so I'm not going to boost him up, but you're definitely encouraged by the 7 pressure, 1 sack performance was a huge part of the Packers wrapping this game up at the end. It was actually looking like they might lose this game. Rashawn Gary really turned it on. One of the best pass rushing performances of any Packer this season this week against the Jags. Next up, Eagles at Giants. Carson Wentz continues to fall here. I mean, anyone with a pair of eyeballs that suffers through an Eagles game can tell it just isn't there with Carson Wentz. And I think the excuses are legit, but they're not legit enough to excuse bottom 5 quarterback play, which is what we're seeing from Carson Wentz. Now, he played much closer to the belt this week and didn't turn the ball over, which has been a huge problem for him, leading the league in turnover-worthy plays. But you could still see the accuracy really not there, especially throwing over the middle of the field that this offense really likes to attack. And also just in general, playing in rhythm and just doing the natural, easy things at the quarterback position. He's pretty similar to Drew Lock this season. So Carson Wentz, man, has it been ugly, and man, do they need him to get back on track ASAP, because it's getting real bad. Richard Rodgers continues to basically be one of this team's top offensive players, which tells you how things are going in Philadelphia. So he's going up. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Alex Singleton continues to play very steady at that linebacker spot, something they've needed. But these veteran defensive tackles are going to come down. So Fletcher Cox and Malik Jackson, -2 for the two of them. So Fletcher Cox, I know he hasn't been 100% this year, but he has been living off of that 2018 season where he produced like Aaron Donald for far too long. He wasn't that guy last year, and he's showing again this year that he is not that guy. He's still an excellent football player, but not that premier elite defensive tackle that he once was. So he needs to come back down. And then Malik Jackson, -2 as well. This guy's dealt with a lot of injuries and has been fighting his way back after not being able to play much for this team last year, but clearly just not the same explosiveness, not the same impact as that pocket pushing presence in the middle as a pass rusher, so he's going to come down. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets released after this season. That free agency signing just has not worked out for the Eagles. And then Jalen Mills, some positivity in the secondary here. He is back playing that safety position. They moved him back to corner out of necessity, and he looks really solid and comfortable as a kind of do-it-all safety for this team. He's been a very good tackler. The coverage instincts are showing in spurts, so he's been fine, he's been solid. Might be carving out his role as a starting safety in this league for years to come, based on what we've seen so far. And then the New York Giants, we talked about Daniel Jones. Wayne Gallman going up for the third week in a row. He's been a pleasant surprise for the Giants. I just thought this guy was not a good running back from every breath of the evaluation. Like, he just wasn't explosive, didn't show great vision, not great shiftiness, always had decent hands, and he's shown some of that. But yeah, he's been a good 3-down do-it-all back for this team, especially on early downs, running tough between the tackles. I think he's bought into the Joe Judge culture here, and yeah, he looks pretty explosive. He's hitting holes hard, he's running through arm tackles. He's been the best running back here, but besides Saquon, obviously, in a long time. So he has been a nice boost for the offense. And then Sterling Shepard looks outstanding. He's playing his best football in a while. I've always been a big Sterling Shepard fan, so it's good to see him healthy and getting good quarterback play and shining through. And then Isaac Yiadom, not quite going to go up this week, but this is looking like a decent pickup for this team. Yiadom was a guy with a lot of physical traits out of Boston College that did not work out in Denver. The Giants sweep him up, and he has been starting, and he's had his warts for sure. That's why he's not going up, but he is showing some promise as a starting corner, which is nice because, they missed out on DeAndre Baker in that position that they were hoping for. So if they can kind of steal Isaac Yiadom and get his career back on track, which Denver was not able to do, you can kind of even out the bust that was DeAndre Baker. Then we have the Bucs-Panthers game. Just one player moving here, and that is going to be who to me has been the second best rookie in the NFL behind Justin Jefferson, and that is Tristan Wirfs, who has been the best of the 4 tackles in this class early on. It was a great tackle class. You could really pick your poison with any of those 4, in my opinion, and Tristan Wirfs, the last of the 4, is proving to be the best early on. He is just explosive in the run game. We knew that was going to be the case coming out of Iowa. There were some morons that thought he was just a guard. My goodness, this guy is clearly a tackle. What's been best about him is, to me, he's improved that anchor. He at times struggled with power at Iowa, and now you're seeing it. That has not been an issue for Tristan Wirfs through the first half of his rookie season. So what an asset for the Bucs, who are just loaded at every single position group. This offensive line was maybe the one question mark heading into the year, and Wirfs, along with a lot of guys on that group, have really stepped it up for Brady and those guys. And then Ronald Jones, not going to quite go up. I know Bucs fans are probably going to be questioning that. I don't know if he really showed anything this week that we didn't know about him already. We know he's explosive. I was close to moving him up, but I just want to see some more consistency from him. I've got him at a 76 right now, maybe even a 77. But yeah, he just, he's a quality back. He's got some explosiveness, but one 98-yard run isn't really going to completely change my focus on Ronald Jones. He's been fine. He's been solid. And then we have, for the Carolina Panthers, a bunch of low-level guys moving up here. So Chris Reed has been replacement level at guard, whatever. Trent Scott, this is looking like a decent pickup. If nothing else, he can be a decent backup. But he's showing some athletic traits. He's a big dude. He just mollywopped someone getting outside on a bubble screen, showing some of that ability to get in space. But he's grading out as a pass protector, so he's going to go up a little bit. Just an interesting piece. The Panthers have been really good with these mauling types of tackles that traditionally would maybe be recorded as having more, stiff feet. Looking at guys like Darrell Williams, and there's a long list of this is kind of their type, even though they have a new coach in here. But Trent Scott kind of fits the prototype. Moten, the right tackle, being another guy like Trent Scott. So just something to keep an eye on. They've done a really good job of getting these tackles to develop here. And Trent Scott, I'm not going to rule out the possibility of him being that guy here in Carolina, even though he didn't work out for the Chargers. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we got Bravion Roy. I liked him coming out of Baylor. I thought this was a great pick for the Panthers, a good find in the 6th round. He kind of fit that Dave Gettleman award winner type of draft pick where a low-level investment guy that can come in and just defend the run and be that block-eating defensive tackle. Reminded me a lot of a guy in Washington that I really like in Tim Settle. With Roy coming out of Baylor. So he's going up, definitely a young rookie that is stepping up in recent weeks. And then Sam Franklin continues to contribute as that do-it-all safety now for the Panthers. Trey Boston, on the other hand, definitely showing his age a little bit. He's not all that old, but man, he is really struggling, limiting big plays in coverage. You're just not seeing that same impact. But his tackling has been worse than ever. He was really in position to contain Ronald Jones and just completely whiffed on that big 98-yard touchdown. So he's going to come down yet again here for the Panthers. Next up, the Washington football team at the Detroit Lions. I think Washington's got the most movement this week. And that is because they're figuring things out here on offense down the stretch, at least getting guys to step up. For the first couple months of the season, it really was just Terry McLaurin and nobody else here. So Logan Thomas has been a good find at tight end, former Virginia Tech quarterback, has actually been a very capable tight end for them. He's blocking well. He's been a secure receiver. And then these two receivers have stepped up. Cam Sims, Isaiah Wright. Sims, more of that prototype 6'5" receiver. Reminds me a lot of Tim Patrick over there in Denver, just that big frame possession receiver. And then Isaiah Wright, I compared him to Cordarrelle Patterson. I did have him as kind of a guy to keep an eye on in the draft as a return man. They're doing some interesting things, getting the ball in his hands, showing that explosiveness and strength and run after catch ability at the receiver position. Then we've got Alex Smith coming up too this week. He definitely doesn't look like his old self. He just cannot move like he used to, which was to be expected. But going back to the film room, kind of recrafting his game here, playing as that pocket quarterback, which is not a super sustainable thing for him. He's really going to need a ton of help if he's going to consistently play at the level he did this week against Detroit, because he can't move and he really can't utilize the entire field in the passing game because his arm is just not very good, which we always knew to be true. But a very smart quarterback and a guy that I would love to see carve out some opportunity as a starter again. I don't think it'll be here in Washington because I think they want to swing bigger than that, but I'm looking at teams like New England and the Chicago Bears potentially. Do they want to take a crack at Alex Smith? Who knows? We'll see what he looks like the rest of the season. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Ronald Darby has been a great pickup for Washington. This guy that's always had the physical talent, but he's settling down. He's playing more physical. He's tackling better than he ever has. So he's coming up. Looking like a good cornerback tandem there between Darby and Fuller. And then Troy Hapke is going to come down. I asked Washington fans what was going on here. He was starting early on. He had his moments, but he did get benched. He gets his way back onto the field this week. Missed tackles, continues to blow coverages. Just looking like maybe he's just a freak athlete that just doesn't have the mental side of the game. I liked him coming out of Penn State, but it's looking pretty grim. I do wonder, though, could he make a conversion to corner and actually make that work? A position that doesn't require you to think quite as much and maybe rework his technique, rework his game. It's just a thought. He is so unbelievably athletic, but it just doesn't show at that free safety position for him all the time. And then the other guys are stepping up in turn. So Cameron Curl, a rookie out of Arkansas, playing a little bit of everything here for them. He's going to go up. He's been fine, nothing crazy. And then DeShazor Everett, a guy that's been basically just a special teamer, has been that veteran presence in the secondary at that safety spot, continues to play all right. And then Tim Settle, aforementioned, comparing him to Bravion Roy, he continues to just be so rock steady. He plays like 25 snaps every week. When he's out there, the run defense is at its best, and he's even getting in there as a pass rusher from time to time. So this guy, keep an eye on him in free agency. I don't think there's going to be a huge market for Tim Settle, but he, to me, is going to be a total steal of a signing. I can think of him as kind of that Shaquille Barrett or Brian Poole, that free agent that just gets a league minimum contract, and you're sitting there like, how did this guy not get a big deal? Maybe he does. I think that'd be awesome, and he might even have one more year here in Washington. I might be getting ahead of myself, but Tim Settle, completely under the radar stud nose tackle that I just wish wasn't playing behind a bunch of former first round picks and could actually be a full-time starter, because I think he can ball. And then just some notes, the offensive line here has actually been much better. I want to see another week of this against basically a non-Detroit pass rush before I boost these guys, but Brandon Scherf is playing his best football in a while. Morgan Moses, he's been going up this year. He could be due to go up again. And then Wes Schweitzer, a former starter for the Falcons who really stunk it up over there, he's playing his best football at left guard here as well. So they're finding some veteran options for this offensive line, and everything's slowly coming together to stabilize this Washington unit, which maybe will help them make a push for that NFC least. Who knows? And then for the Detroit Lions, I will apologize. Although, he wasn't all that good for the first half of the season, but DeAndre Swift showed off why he was my RB1 this week, so he looks great. He looks a little different than I remember from Georgia. He was more of that outside zone, receiving back, think Alvin Kamara for Georgia. He's been much more between the tackles. He's showing more burst to hit holes hard. He's running through more arm tackles. Just looks like a different player than I expected. But this week it really showed. And that might actually increase his potential. If he can be more of this, Zeke Elliott between the tackles, power runner, could maybe increase his ceiling, especially if he still has some of that high-level impact in the receiving game. So he was my number one RB in this class, and for the first time this week, he gets his start and looks like that guy. So DeAndre Swift, some optimism this week for Detroit, for a fan base that's desperately looking for it. Ode Abushi, let me know, Lions fans, I remember... I think Alex Lyons, you were telling me that they benched, he's like my go-to Lions info, that they benched Vaitai at right guard. Is Vaitai injured? What's going on at right guard there? Is Ibushi the new full-time starter? But he's been fine there at right guard. But that could very well be a problem for this team if Vaitai can't even win a guard spot on this team. But anyway, let me know about that one. Cornerback Desmond Trufant just hasn't worked out here. He's just getting beat. He's not as good in a man cover scheme. He spent most of his career as that cover 3 Seattle corner in that Seattle scheme down there, Atlanta. He's just uncomfortable. He's old. He's getting beat. Not his old self. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get released by Detroit here this offseason. That just has not worked out. He was a surprisingly cheap signing for this team. A lot of us really liked that signing, but it just has not worked out here. Romeo Okwara is having an excellent year here. I feel like he's got to be on his last year of his contract. Feels like he's been here forever for Detroit. But yeah, he has all of a sudden been like a really good pass rusher for this team. I think it was 5 more pressures this week, a sack, just getting after the quarterback, man. And we know he can play some good run defense. He's got that length, but he's shown more finesse to his game this year. With his brother on the team, maybe stepping up his game. And then Everson Griffin has been maybe a little better than I expected here for Detroit. Looked pretty washed for the Dallas Cowboys, but was not a full-time pass rusher, or at least getting the full-time pass rush snaps for them with that deep room in Dallas. And he's come in and been utilized well in this Belichick scheme as kind of that Trey Flowers type of bigger-bodied defensive end. So he looks good. He could be coming up, but still rated pretty high off of his former glory, so needs to show more consistency to get back to that level. Anyway, Amani Oruwariye, after we lowered him last week, had one of his best games of the season, granted against the Washington football team. Not the most impressive thing, but definitely of note there. Next on our list, we have the Broncos-Raiders game. So Drew Lock, we talked about him. Tim Patrick continues to be a nice impact on the outside as that big-bodied outside perimeter player. And then Deshaun Williams contributing as a run defender. The Broncos, maybe the best thing they do is get these guys to play good run defense on the interior. They're getting that out of Draymond Jones as well. He's a high upside athletic interior defensive lineman that I liked coming out of Ohio State. Just hasn't shown that week-to-week consistency, but he's been good the last couple weeks. That's a nice bright spot for the Broncos. And then Bradley Chubb has had a really quiet month. I don't know if he's lost interest or what's going on there, but I want to see some more from him after he shined around the midpoint, week 5, week 6, and just has kind of fallen off since. And then for the Raiders, it's time. Derek Carr is going to get a little more respect here this week. I still don't think it's anything crazy. He's in the perfect fit for him. He's playing, I think, the best version of himself in an offense that is really well schemed. It's blocked really well. They have guys that create after the catch, get open in the short to intermediate game. Raiders fans are very happy with what Derek Carr is doing, as you should be. He's playing at that Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill level, where I think is the best version of Derek Carr. So he's now at the same ranking as those guys, and I think that's fair. I don't think he elevates the play here. We've seen him with less surrounding core, and we've seen a worse version of Derek Carr. But yeah, he's been really solid. He's been accurate. He's not making mistakes. He's executing, doing everything you can ask of a quote-unquote franchise quarterback. So Derek Carr going up, and then Devontae Booker going up for the second week in a row. He has been an explosive number 2 next to Josh Jacobs. Just good career resurgence for a veteran that I think most of us thought his career was done, but making the most of this opportunity to say the least. And then you got Denzel Good. He's stepping up at right guard with Gabe Jackson out, so he's going to go up 64 to 65. And then the linebackers here, Nick Kwiatkowski, he's been outstanding. And then Nicholas Moreau has been very nice as the third weak side linebacker here, being a secure tackler and elevating his game. And has been decent in coverage as well. He's actually been probably better than Corey Littleton in that role. And then just a note on Jeff Heath. He comes in at free safety this week and had an outstanding game. Now, he was going against Drew Lock, who was just, throwing him some floaties. But that could be a big boost. Jeff Heath has really not been a factor for the Raiders this year. It's a free safety position that they need some help. So he was a free agent signing from Dallas. Could be a factor for them. We'll see how he holds up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who he's going to get tested. And then for the next game, we got the Bills-Cardinals. So for the Bills, just a couple pieces moving on the offense. Cole Beasley, I tweeted about him this week. He has been one of the big surprise, happy stories of the year. I mean, the biggest thing here is he looks legitimately explosive out of the slot. He does not look like this chain-moving, short game receiver. He is actually catching crossing routes 20 yards downfield. He's been a quote-unquote deep threat. He's not lining up outside and beating guys on go balls, but he's just been an explosive separator and run after the catch threat for this team. And I think he's just one piece of the puzzle for what has helped the Bills all come together. And then Ike Butker at left guard, former Iowa lineman, continues to be a really good run blocker here. I don't know if there's anything here or not. He's just one of many offensive linemen that have been developed really well here. But the Bills' offensive line has been just so nutty the last few weeks. They are a really good unit, and Butker deserves some credit for that. Then for the Cardinals, this is going to include last night's Thursday night football game. DJ Humphries continues to kick ass. This guy has reached his potential. I think it's fair to say this is huge for the Cardinals. The offensive line was looking like a major question mark coming in, and I think you can point to that as one of the biggest reasons the Cardinals are, I don't know if you can say exceeding expectations, but at least meeting expectations of being kind of that, I would say wild card 10-11 win team in a tough NFC West. I think that was kind of the best case scenario for the Cardinals this year, and I would say they're reaching it. But yeah, the offensive line with DJ Humphries got that big contract in the offseason. It was kind of one of those like, well, you kind of got to pay him. You spent a first-round pick on him. He's been fine, but he's reaching that upside here after getting paid, which you really like to see. And then on the defense, Isaiah Simmons, I think we all kind of knew this was going to happen eventually, but he's getting those starting reps, and God, he just stands out. He looks like a linebacker, dude. Like, he has transformed his body. This is not the Isaiah Simmons that played at Clemson. That needs to be made abundantly clear. This guy played a bunch of free safety for the Clemson Tigers at about 220, 225 pounds. He looks every bit of that 235 pounds that he is listed at. He looked like this at the Combine too, and I think that is all part of the reason why he wasn't getting all that playing time early on, is he had to really transform his game. He is a legitimate middle linebacker now. And it shows. The most impressive thing about Isaiah Simmons in these last 2 weeks is he looks comfortable in coverage. You can tell that he just has that natural feel. But what's really nice about him is he already looks like one of the best tacklers in the league. He has these long, strong arms, and obviously the athleticism underneath him to stay in front of anyone. He is a unicorn type of player, and I am excited. I mean, his career is just getting started here. I really want to see how he matches up against really athletic mismatch problems and see some of that man-to-man ability that was always going to be kind of an interesting thing. George Kittle's out for the year, so we're not going to see that. But I want to see some of those matchups and see how he looks there. But God, he is so intriguing and exciting, and this thing's just getting started. And then you have Hassan Reddick. He is playing that edge role that he played at Temple years and years ago. They've needed guys to step up there, and he's actually looking pretty comfortable out there. I think this was always his best position. He's just kind of a tweener athletic dude. He's in a contract year. I think he could be a starting caliber player, kind of like the guy on this team next to him, Devon Kennard, who's been a starter in this league for multiple years, and Kennard only had 11 snaps in this game, so Cardinals fans, let me know, is Kennard injured? Did Reddick take that job? I'd love to get that little inside info from you deep dive Cardinals fans. All right, next we got the Bengals-Steelers game. Not a whole lot to say here. This was just a physical molly-whopping by the Steelers. So the Bengals offensive line would be going down if they weren't already miserably rated. Just one guy dropping here for the Bengals, and that is A.J. Green. Just looks like an absolute shell of himself. I'm really glad we didn't raise him up about a month ago when this team was just kind of peppering him with targets by necessity. But ever since T. Higgins has emerged and Tyler Boyd's been playing well, A.J. Green's just a non-factor. They did target him 5 times this week, no receptions. I mean, he just can't get open. He's not coming down with tough catches. There's no run after the catch ability. He looks like he doesn't want to be here. He honestly has been one of the worst starting receivers in the NFL this season. So he's going to come down 4. Maybe he gets rejuvenated next year. He's going to be a free agent. I find that pretty unlikely based on the version of A.J. Green that we're seeing this season, though. I wouldn't be stunned if he retires, honestly. He just looks like he's just out of it. And then for the Steelers, Deontay Johnson, when he is healthy, he is one of the premier separators in this league. He is their go-to receiver. I think he's the biggest reason we're going to see Juju Smith-Schuster become a free agent this offseason because he very much is, I think, their biggest asset at the receiver position, even more than Juju and Claypool, because he just has that elite, I don't know if I'm ready to say elite, but just high-level route running, reliability to be that guy that gets open in the quick passing game that this offense really eats off of. So he's been just so good for them. Their offense is clearly better when Deontay Johnson is on the field. Cameron Sutton, as we move on to the defensive side of the ball, he is making a case to actually be this team's best slot corner, and that's saying a lot because Mike Hilton, I still think, is one of the best slot corners in the league. But Cameron Sutton is in a contract year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Steelers, but he was drafted in 2017. So he's a guy that very well could be getting one of those kind of Bryce Callahan type of contracts, be a surprise high-level slot starter for someone next year. It was a third-round pick out of Tennessee, and he is showing that quickness and physicality in the slot that you like to see. So he looks outstanding. And then Terrell Edmunds was a surprising first-round pick and was always a guy that felt like, yeah, he's going to really struggle early on. He just was never worthy of that first-round pick. But when an organization like the Steelers takes an athletic guy that high with high character, it's only a matter of time before they turn into something. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Terrell Edmunds. He's still had his problems in coverage, but his ability as a tackler, he has been such a great guy to step up with Devin Bush out, because he's showing that sideline to sideline speed and helping limit big plays. He's a big part of what they do here. So he's going to come up. His tackling is most notable here, but he's turning into a starting caliber safety for sure. And if he starts to improve some things in coverage, which I don't think will happen, but if he could, you could be looking at a really good, strong safety. Next up, we've got the Seahawks at Rams. For the Seahawks, this is going to include that Week 11 Thursday Night Football game last night against the Cardinals. So Mike Iupati, this has been a huge boost for this offensive line. Jordan Simmons was the starter there at left guard, easily their weakest link. And it's good to get him out of the starting lineup and get Mike Iupati in. This is a former all-pro type of guard that is actually playing kind of like his old self. He's been really good in the run game for Seattle as they're trying to get a little bit more back towards, away from the let Russ cook thing and run the ball a little more down the stretch here. And I think Iupati has been a big part of that. But he's been good in pass protection as well. So if he stays healthy, I know Brandon Shell here, who's going up this week as well. I know he got banged up against the Cardinals, so they need him to stay healthy. That right tackle spot could be a problem for them real quick. But if they can get Iupati healthy, Shell healthy, if they can get Ethan Pochik back and then kick Damian Lewis at right guard, all of a sudden, Seattle's offensive line has gone over the course of an offseason from a bottom 10 unit to potentially a top 10 unit. That these guys, obviously, they're dealing with some injuries there, but if they can get these guys healthy, I really do believe that about Seattle, which, they won a Super Bowl the last time they had a top 10 offensive line there in Seattle. And then we got DJ Dallas. He's been a little bit of a benefactor of that. I don't think we're going to see too much more of him with getting these backs back with Hyde and Carson, I think, getting healthy. But he's proved to be a decent, relief pitcher at running back. He's kind of like a poor man's David Johnson. He's got that straight line speed. He's a decent pass catcher. So he played valiantly and has done well in the limited touches he's gotten. So he's going to go up again. And then Poona Ford has been this team's best defensive lineman this year. He's been one of their best pass rushers this year, which you'd wish that would not be the case because he's just not a very good pass rusher. But he's shown some more burst and power as a pass rusher than he has in years past. Still a very good run defender. I like Poona Ford. Kind of a weird player. He's only 5'11", but he just plays very fast and physical, and he's been good. And then Damon Harrison, he's actually going to come down. He gets his first 2 games in here of 2020. This was a concern with him at Detroit last year. He's up there in age. He's like 33 years old. Had shown that year-to-year regression after being one of the premier all-time great run-stuffing nose tackles. And that just was not the version of himself that we saw at Detroit last year. He sits there on the open market for the entire offseason, for the first half of the season. Seattle decides to, kick the tires on him. And he's been serviceable. Like, I think this 75 to 77 mark is about where he is. He can be that early down run defender and be okay and not get lost and hold his own. But he's just, he's not blowing up blocks. He's not shutting down gaps. He hasn't done it for 2 years. He has certainly not been that guy for Seattle. He's been fine. He's been what they've needed as they lack depth at that position. But seeing it now for a second year in a row, him playing at that kind of mediocre level or just average level, it's just time to, take the star reputation away from him and accept what he is at this point, which is just a capable early down run defender, which is an extremely redundant thing in the league. There's like 50 to 60 of these guys like Damon Harrison. Then we got Ugo Amadi. He's played valiantly in the slot. He's shown some problems in coverage, as have pretty much everyone in the secondary here. But he has shown that he is that tough, physical slot corner that can really come up and hit you and tackle well. So he's going to come up a little bit. And then the notes on this game, we got Will Dissly continues to play really well. He makes plays when they call his name in the receiving game, which isn't all that often. But he is showing to be one of those premier run blocking tight ends as well, adding to the physicality of this front as this offense kind of reshapes themselves mid-season a little bit here, becoming a little more of a balanced team. Will Dissly has been a part of that, becoming kind of a Nick Boyle for this team as that just number 2 tight end that is just a nightmare in the run game. And will catch the ball when it's thrown his way. I think that's a good comparison for Will Dissly, who, I've made fun of Seahawks fans for saying he's a top 10 tight end. I don't think any Ravens fan is out there saying Nick Boyle is a top 10 tight end, but he's certainly an asset to this team. And we saw the Ravens really miss him when he went out. So Dissly's a good player. I'll admit that. And then DK Metcalf, kind of a polarizing couple of weeks here. So he makes some incredible plays against the Cardinals, but he also had some drops. Almost a Marquez Valdez-Scantling type of performance from DK Metcalf against the Arizona Cardinals, but also really struggled against Jalen Ramsey. It goes to show you that how good Jalen Ramsey can be. Really good matchup for Jalen Ramsey, one of the few corners in this league that can match DK Metcalf's physical talents. But all in all, I was impressed by the route running that we saw, especially against Arizona from DK Metcalf. So came really close to boosting him up. But the drops against Arizona, really the one thing that held me back from doing that. But definitely got our eye on DK Metcalf as he continues to, make a case for being the best receiver in the NFL. Like the flashes have been there. It's just a matter of consistency for him. And then we have Alton Robinson, a note on him. I like this pick late in the draft. Big, explosive defensive end. Fits this scheme really well. He's getting limited playing time here. It's nothing crazy, but he has caught my attention. We'll see how he looks moving forward. And then for the Rams, Darius Williams. He's been one of the top risers of the series this year. And I've compared him to Casey Hayward. I'll talk about that one more time and then leave it there. Just a guy that at 5'9", many people would pigeonhole him as a slot corner. That's what happened when the Chargers signed Casey Hayward, who had only played slot for the Green Bay Packers, but a very similar player in that put him on the outside, play cover 4, cover 3, drop him, back him off. Don't ask a 5'9" corner to press. That's the main reason you see these 5'9" corners get pigeonholed to the slot by most teams in the league. But the Rams say, we've got a nice scheme here. We don't need to press Darius Williams. We can play him off and just keep his eyes on the quarterback. This is a very smart player. Very, very smart player. He understands his responsibility in the zone coverage. He understands route concepts in front of him, and he understands when to take risks. And that's a very valuable trait at that corner position. So this is a very unique player. He's a guy that when he does hit that free agent market, or if maybe the Rams do re-sign him, he's a guy that's going to have a very limited market. You're going to need teams like the Chargers to like this guy, maybe the Colts potentially, but a team that is going to run some of that off-zone coverage. The Bills come to mind a little bit as a fit for Darius Williams. But yeah, he's just been a perfect player, a great scheme fit, and a great find for the Rams to kick him outside and really trust this guy to make plays. 2 picks in this game against Russell Wilson. And then you have Sebastian Joseph Day, another role player that they maybe didn't expect so much from, and he has stepped up and been one of this team's best run defenders, so he's going to go up again, 71 to a 72. And then Terrell Lewis was good in this game. I like Terrell Lewis. If he can do that consistently, it's going to be a hell of a find out of Alabama, a guy that struggled with health throughout his career, but he is just an explosive pass rusher when he's out there. So we'll see. He could be going up soon. Then we got the Niners at Saints game. Brandon Ayuk continues to be the brightest thing happening for this Niners offense, literally being Deebo Samuel for them, catching, crossing routes, manufacturing touches for him. I said it the night he got drafted that this is going to be the player that looks the most wrong about my pre-draft evaluation because I had him in the mid-teens. I definitely liked the athletic traits. Didn't love his route running, didn't necessarily love his catch and traffic ability. But you put him with Kyle Shanahan, what a perfect fit. I mean, he literally does. It's double Deebo's. It's exactly what I said on draft night. They just haven't had Deebo Samuel in there for the most part this year. But yeah, Ayuk looks great. They're peppering him with targets, and he is just been exactly what I said he would be, which is Deebo Samuel. Then Daniel Brunskill plus 167 to a 68. He's actually going to kick into center these last couple weeks. So he started at tackle last year. They try him at guard. He was hit or miss. But the last 2 weeks at center, he's been really good, and I think that's a good fit for him. We've seen centers at his size. He's around 300 pounds, a little bit lighter. but we've seen centers at that size with that athleticism really succeed. Looking at a decent comp for him being Bradbury for the Minnesota Vikings in this same outside zone scheme. So an interesting fit there. I think there's a lot of upside with Daniel Brunskill at center. Jason Kelce-esque guy that can snap the ball, get on the move, have those reach blocks at that center position. So he's handled it well these last couple weeks. It's been a center position that they've really been experimenting with different guys. So +1 for Daniel Brunskill looks like a good find there at center. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Javon Kinlaw was good this week. He's not going to move quite yet. He finally, a 2-sack game this week, looked like that top 15 pick this week for the first time. So they would love to see him continue to play like that. It just has not been the case this year. And then Arik Armstead on the edge has, he's been banged up, so take that for what it is. But you're seeing it without D Ford, without Bosa out there, without DeForest Buckner. Teams just, he's not that game-wrecking defensive end. He's a really good run defender. He's a decent pass rusher, but I don't consider him a superstar player. I didn't love this contract. I think they should have paid Buckner instead of Armstead myself. I think that's playing out this year. But they went with Armstead, and I think when they have everyone else in there, he's a versatile necessity for this team. But when the other guys are gone, I don't get too excited about what Arik Armstead brings to the table. And then for the Saints, just one guy is going to change this week. It was a good week for the Saints, but actually Cesar Ruiz is going to drop down, and that's the only movement here. First round pick, just the last 4 weeks has been really rough, pass protecting at guard. So he's going to come down until proven otherwise. I think he's got a chance to turn this career around very quickly, but as he sits here today, he has been a sure weakness for this offense. And then just some notes on the defense. They're definitely close to moving up. This defense in general was very highly respected coming into the season. And they really struggled for a while, but they're playing better, so could be creeping back up as far as their ratings are concerned here. But Demario Davis, Marcus Williams, Malcolm Jenkins, the veterans there, all stepping up. That these three guys really were not playing up to their capabilities in the first half of the season, and they are now. So a big boost for the Saints defense. Those guys could be seeing boosts if they continue to play well. Now on to the Chargers-Dolphins game. I'll get the Herbert talk out of the way real quick. Not going to say much other than it was a really bad game from Justin Herbert. He looked much more like the bust that I projected coming out of Oregon. Not saying I was right about that. I think I've very much been wrong about that, but not great to see that version of Justin Herbert show up this week where he struggled to play in rhythm and made critical mistakes down the stretch. Obviously, you want to see him get that out of his game and play more like the Justin Herbert we saw for the first 6 weeks of his career, whatever it was. But the players moving here, Donald Parham, he looks like an NFL tight end. It was an interesting project coming out of the AAF, a young player. And it's 6'8", 240 pounds, part receiver, part tight end. But he looks like an NFL tight end out there. They're getting some pass protection out of him. I don't know if he's ever going to be a good run blocker, but that's fine. They don't really use him in that way. But he has been reliable when called upon. He actually looks pretty athletic out there. He can separate at that tight end position at 6'8". So he's an interesting project for sure. And they're moving him along here, just kind of working him in, 15 snaps a week or so. But they go his way when he's on the field. And he's been pass protecting at that tight end spot as well. And then Kalen Ballage, I've always been a big Kalen Ballage guy. It's just been a matter of talent in front of him, I think. He's in here in Miami. It's a bit of a revenge game for him. It was in the Jets. Just, terrible landing spots for Kalen Ballage. Give this guy a lane, and he's going to show that explosiveness. I compared him to David Johnson coming out of Arizona State. I really liked him way back when. So he's finally, I think, getting a scenario where he can succeed. The Chargers are not the best offensive line, but they've been a decent running team for the majority of the season. And Anthony Lynn showing that while he has his flaws as a head coach, he is a hell of a running backs coach, getting the most out of these guys. So I think Kalen Ballage has as much upside as anyone in this room. It's a very deep room. I don't know how much more opportunities he's going to get as these other guys get healthy. I saw Austin Eckler will be returning here soon. But yeah, I like what I've seen from Kalen Ballage as that full speed ahead, big-bodied guy that is a really nice fluid pass catcher as well. Very similar to David Johnson. And then Trey Turner is going to come down. This just hasn't worked out. He's been injured for the majority of the season. He got one start like week 2. He gets to start this week. He's been really bad when he's been out there. Looking like they probably lost the Russell Okung trade. It's not like Okung's been all that healthy for the Panthers either, but this was deemed at first like a good acquisition for the Chargers, but it really just isn't looking like he's going to be much of a factor for this team at all. And then Nasir Adderley, we've been dropping him. He struggled early on, but he had his best game as a Charger by far. Did not look lost out there, was tackling well, so he's going to go up 1. If they can get something from him, that's a big boost, and he's got a lot of potential. He was a second-round pick. A lot of people liked him coming out of Delaware. A lot of people like this pick. Getting Derwin James back next year, if you can pair Adderley with him finally next year, that would be really nice, but we're a ways away from that. And then for the Dolphins, just a lot of low-level movement for this team. They continue to get good production from guys that we didn't expect, and I think that's how you get a Dolphins team that doesn't have a ton of talent across the board stepping up and being a playoff contending team. So these are some of the names contributing to that cause. Jakeem Grant has been a total mismatch problem for the Dolphins. Teams have not figured out how to cover this guy. At 5'7", it's not a guy you're going to throw a jump ball to necessarily, but he gets open and he does not drop the ball. And Tua is a great quarterback to stick that ball right on him because he doesn't have a huge catch radius as well. So if used correctly, Jakeem Grant can be a legitimate offensive weapon. He runs good routes and separates, and he's going up. Then the 2 tight ends here have been good blockers and have caught the ball when called upon. So Shaheen, Durham-Smythe. Shaheen got that contract extension here for Miami. They like what they've seen from the former second-round pick for the Chicago Bears. They go out and trade for him, and he's been everything they hoped for. So that was a nice acquisition by this front office. And then Savon Ahmed continues to, but is adding to this group of young running backs here with Gaskin and these guys that have really stepped up. They go ahead and release Jordan Howard this week. They just, wanted nothing to do with that athleticism, and they put in a much different back in Savon Ahmed, who showed a lot of burst. I didn't love him coming out of Washington. I didn't think he showed the speed that he necessarily was capable of, but they're getting him to just play fast and trust that athleticism. I think too much at Washington. He tried to be more of a power guy and run between the tackles. Miami's like, just be yourself, show that speed and athleticism, and it's shining through much more here for the Dolphins. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Raekwon Davis is going to come up, third-round pick out of Alabama. I loved this scheme fit here as that hybrid defensive end. It's what he was at Alabama, and I thought he showed his best football as that 4-tech, 5-tech, early down run defender for Alabama. And he is a perfect fit in this Belichick scheme where he's not necessarily going to have to get dirty playing, in between the guards necessarily. He can get a little more space and show that foot speed. Excellent game defending the run this week. A high upside guy. This was one of my favorite picks of theirs from a value perspective in the first 3 rounds with all those draft picks they had, and this was his best game. So I'm definitely excited to see Raekwon Davis continue to grow as a high upside defensive tackle, defensive end guy for the Dolphins. And then Zach Sealer also playing that role. He has not been all that great, but he's getting a ton of reps here. He's been far from a liability. He's been stable for them, so he's going to go up, a veteran guy there. And then Nick Needham, he continues to hold on to that starting slot corner position ahead of Noah Igbenogany, their first-round pick. And he had a great game this week. He's a really secure tackler. He's a physical player. He's a little bit bigger for a slot corner. So like what I'm seeing there. Eventually, I think you'd like to see Noah Igbenogany take that job. But at least you're happy that somebody is holding on to it. And then just a note on Austin Jackson. He was good for the second week in a row, the first-round pick. So could be going up next week, definitely, if he plays the way he's been playing. On to the monsoon game, the Ravens at Patriots. Just one player moving for the Ravens, and that's Patrick Mekari. He has been the answer at right guard that they've needed. Tyree Phillips was miserable there, the rookie. So he gets injured, and it ends up being for the best for the Ravens. Patrick Mekari's been good at right guard. The pass protection in general has been a problem there. They need an answer at left tackle now, but at least they figured out the right guard thing, I think, with Patrick Mekari. And then for the Patriots, the same 2 guys that have really kind of, I don't want to say sparked this offense, but in a way have sparked it by giving them an identity. at least. Jacoby Myers as that over the middle of the field threat, just being kind of a really poor man's Michael Thomas, secure hands, showing that willingness to go over the middle of the field, not afraid of a safety coming down to light him up. So he's been good there. And then Damian Harris continues to be really nice for the Patriots. He looks like the best running back they've had. Man, I don't know how far back you got to go to say that they've had a running back look this explosive, this physical, this consistent. He is the perfect fit for what the Patriots are trying to do right now. I don't think Sony Michel could do this. Just be that physical force. Like, he looks yoked going through the tackles here. He's got great run lanes in front of him. He's a great fit. So between him and Myers and Cam Newton, they're figuring out some things on this offense. And then for the defense, Kyle Duggar, great to see him stepping up. This is why I wasn't really afraid of the Patrick Chung opt-out here, because Kyle Duggar has so much more upside than Patrick Chung, and he's showing it here. Not just the speed to fly to the ball and be a secure tackler. We knew that was going to happen, but he's showing some range and coverage ability and man-to-man ability as well. I compared him to Adrian Amos coming out of Lenore-Ryan, and I think that's showing here. I actually think that's a really solid comp. Amos, a really secure tackler. So he's been that guy over the last few weeks for the Patriots. And then Chase Winovich went off this week. I did not boost him because he had a really quiet month of October and into the first 2 weeks of November as well. But he had an awesome game this week against the Ravens. He just ate. So he could be going up if he keeps playing like that. Good week for those Michigan defensive ends between Gary and Chase Winovich. Then the last game here, the Vikings at the Bears. So for the Minnesota Vikings, Garrett Bradbury continues to be one of the best run-blocking guards, centers in the league, just run-blocking offensive linemen in general. But again, showing some of those weaknesses as a pass protector. He's been better at it than he was in his rookie year for sure. So just a note there. I mean, this guy is a very one-dimensional player at the moment, but the one dimension he does have is lethal. I mean, he flies off the ball. He is just going to get under you. He's a little bit shorter, but man, he is just explosive and is such a big part of this run game. I know they did not have the best week running the ball. I mean, you have a lot of speed on this Bears defense to contain Dalvin Cook, but Garrett Bradbury definitely continues to shine. And then Justin Jefferson is going to continue to go up. I think he has been the best offensive rookie independent of positional value this year. What a find this was for Minnesota. I can't believe the Eagles elected not to take Justin Jefferson. Good for the Vikings for trusting that he was much more than just the slot player that LSU used him as. This guy, he's very similar to me to A.J. Brown, who's in the same scheme in Tennessee that Minnesota runs here, running those crossing routes, working over the middle of the field. He's just too fast to catch with, to run with, and he's just really good after the catch. He catches it in stride. He's not afraid of guys draped over him. He's got that my ball mentality, and he is going to fight for every last yard after the catch. He is just the perfect guy for this Vikings offense. He has been a better receiver than Adam Thielen this year. And then Dakota Dozier, the left guard, is going to go up here +2. They're making some moves here at the guard spot. So they released the Ohio State scrub. I can't think of his name right now. Bengals, I think, picked him up. But they released him. Dozier's been starting in left guard all year. He goes up 2. Like, he's been pretty bad, honestly, but he's been replacement level. He's held on to that job. And then they're starting Ezra Cleveland at right guard, and he actually has not been very good there. I have a lot of question marks about this decision right here. I liked Ezra Cleveland coming out. I really liked his athleticism. He had really good pass sets at Boise State. But the thing with Ezra Cleveland is, A, he's undersized. He is not a strong, heavy guy, which usually you want to see that from a guard, especially if they're going to play next to Garrett Bradbury, who has some of those weaknesses himself. In theory, he'd be a really good outside zone run blocker, but I just want a little more meat on the inside there, and I really liked Ezra Cleveland to follow the path of Brian O'Neill, their right tackle, who came in as an undersized athletic tackle, and I like the upside of Cleveland just sitting and learning for a year and coming in and playing tackle. If anything else, maybe kick Reef into guard and play Cleveland at tackle. I'm not crazy about this move. It has not looked good to start. But another thing is, when teams do this, a lot of times they don't kick them back out to tackle. So to me, it's not, you spend a second round pick on Ezra Cleveland, And to make him, in my opinion, a worse version of himself at guard, instead of kind of trusting the process and finding someone else to play guard and sticking Cleveland at tackle, where I think there's a lot of upside to have a really nice tackle duo long term. I have my questions about how this is going to play out. I think Minnesota's doing this wrong right now. Maybe it's just a temporary thing and they want to put Cleveland at tackle next year. Just traditionally, that's not what teams do. They don't usually kick a guy inside and then put him back out. But I guess we've seen a little more of that lately. We'll see what all happens there. I just want to see him long-term at tackle. I think that's what his position is. And then for the defense, talk about conversations about what types of position a guy is. Hercules Mataafa. You got to go back to my deep dive into the 2019 Vikings, and I went at it with Vikings fans because they were telling me that Hercules Mataafa was the next big thing, a defensive tackle. The guy's like 260 pounds. He's not a defensive tackle. He's built like a defensive end. And sure, they use him as that interior rusher, that Brandon Graham type of, pocket pushing 3-tech on passing downs. But I always thought he could have some real potential as a bigger bodied early down defensive end, which they just didn't use him in that role. But now they are, because they are so thin at that position, and he looks better than he ever has. He has 2 sacks in the last 2 weeks. He's been making stops in the run game. This is a unique athlete. He's very strong. He's got a good get-off. He flies to the ball. So I'm very intrigued by Hercules Mataafa now, to me, playing the correct position finally. They've been so thin at defensive tackle, and they've had a lot of depth at defensive end. But now that's flipped a little bit. They need more help at defensive end, and they're getting it from Hercules Mataafa. So a little toot at Vikings fans. Hercules Mataafa did, jack crap when he was playing defensive tackle, and Vikings fans were like, "You're an idiot. This guy's a future star at D tackle." I'm like, I don't think so. Well, now he's playing defensive end, and he looks like he might be the next big thing at defensive end. We'll see. He's a very intriguing player that Mike Zimmer really likes. And they've kept him around, frankly, longer than your typical back end of the depth chart guy gets. But he's an interesting player. We'll see what happens down the rest of the season. Chris Boyd is stepping up at corner. Credit Mike Zimmer. Credit Chris Boyd. These guys, they really need help at that corner spot, and Chris Boyd has provided it. He's been not like lights out or anything. He's been but he hasn't given up, too many big plays. He's tackling well. He's been fine. He's nothing crazy here, but they've needed someone to step up, so he's going to go up. And then another defensive end edge player here, DJ Wonnum. They drafted him this year. He's an athletic guy. Zimmer's had some success with these high upside kind of project type defensive ends. Wonnum has really shown up the last few weeks, and he's got some potential to continue to climb. The Vikings really need help at that edge spot. And then for the Bears, Nick Foles is going to come down. I mean, God, he's just so bad. I can't believe they thought he would be the answer. He has offered nothing to this offense. They were better with Mitch Trubisky for sure. I think when Trubisky's healthy, they'll go back to Mitch. But the offensive line continues to struggle. Cody Whitehair is going to go down this week. The offense is, quite frankly, maybe even behind the New York Jets for the worst offense in football, which is just insanity. I mean, you can make a case that Joe Flacco would have been a better signing than Nick Foles here, for sure. Then you got Brent Urban, +1, 72 to a 73. He continues to be that really nice defensive end in run defense. The Bears have had to go up against Derrick Henry and now Dalvin Cook, and they have shown that they are a premier run defense in this league. And Roquan Smith is finally reaching that blue chip potential. He had that learning curve. I think this is a lesson for guys like Devin White, who's shown his ups and downs, guys like Patrick Queen and Kenneth Murray. It's just a linebacker position that takes some time, and Roquan had those same struggles that you're seeing from some of those other really athletic linebackers. Same thing goes for Isaiah Simmons, who kind of had his early struggles in some ways. But once you get up to the speed of the NFL and you understand your scheme, you understand what other teams are trying to do, and you've got this athleticism, it just shows on tape. I mean, he flies from left to right. He's getting better in coverage on a week-to-week basis. He's so athletic. He's definitely impressing, and he is going to come up one here, 79 to an 80, to wrap up the studs and duds this week. So that's going to do it. I do hope you hit that like button. I hope you enjoyed this week's installment of the series. Let me know down in the comments if you think there's any other players that deserved to be on this list. Maybe I'll keep an extra eye on them next week. Cheers as always, everyone, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.